Hello everybody, Arcane Hulk here today. I want to go over the possibilities of the April content update coming to Destiny and what I am kind of hesitant about, what I've been thinking, and I'm not expecting too much, honestly. So based off the picture that we have seen, I'll go ahead and show it up on the screen for you. The same thing everybody's been talking about, this picture right here showing Taken looking Guardians wearing Prison of Elders armor. Now, of course, if you did play during House of Wolves, you will obviously see it right off the bat, mainly because the Titan helmet with the big old airplane wings jetting off the side. So, this does leave a lot of people to speculate that a few things. One, we'll finally be getting a Taken shader, long overdue in my opinion. And two, they will be redoing the Prison of Elders in some way, shape, or form. Now, Prison of Elders was met with a very differing points of view depending on who you asked. Hardcore raiders didn't much care for it because it wasn't a full-on raid experience, and PvP players didn't much like it because the maps we got weren't too great. Some of them included Thieves' Den and Timekeeper, if I'm not mistaken. As far as PvP is concerned, House of Wolves wasn't the greatest expansion. There weren't too many new weapons that were introduced that were game-changing or meta-defining. It was still the same old Year 1 hand cannons that were dominating that meta at the time, and PvP wasn't affected too much. And of course, House of Wolves also introduced Trials of Osiris, which is a staple in Destiny now, but that's besides the point. PvP, aside from Trials of Osiris, was very lackluster in the House of Wolves, but what it comes down to is a speculation behind the whole Prison of Elders remake. Now, what has me hesitant about this is Bungie didn't really handle the first iteration of Prison of Elders all that well, in my opinion. What most of us were expecting back then was something a bit more akin to Gears of War Horde mode or maybe even Nazi zombies, except with the caveat that whenever we make it to a certain point or the further we get up in rounds, then the better loot would be awarded. Now, of course, this was the case somewhat, so let's break it down a little bit. So, Prison of Elders level 26 through 34 were limited to only 5 rounds at 3 waves around, where the level 35 Prison of Elders was 6 rounds with Skolas being exclusive to level 35 and him being the 6th and final round with no waves in between. He was just the final boss. Now, depending on your skill level, whether or not you made it to the very end of the 34 and 35 versions of the PoE, then you would have a chance to be awarded a very special exotic bounty. Somewhat similar to the exotic bounties in Vanilla Destiny, except they were mainly geared around Prison of Elders. So this is, of course, how you got the Queenbreaker's Bow, the Lord of Wolves shotgun, and the Drake's Promise, worst sidearm in the game, trash weapon. But that was your loot. It was only 3 main items people went for. Everything else was kind of bad. The Servants of Axor, I think, was the fusion rifle or something. Just they weren't very memorable at all. So that's where Bungie went wrong. Now, if Bungie really is going to turn this into a Prison of Elders remake, like so many people suspect, then they have to make a lot of changes. So let's get into that. What do I want them to change about Prison of Elders? First of all, let's make it so that there are endless rounds. That way we can keep going as long as we can and really get loot based on that. So for example, I'd say every 10 waves or so that you survive in a room, then you get a special limited edition legendary cosmetic item that will drop from that room specifically. And depending on how far you make it, you'll get different tiers. So maybe, for example, once you make it to round 10, you get this special legendary class item that's Fallen themed, and that's only if you're in the Fallen room. But if you survive 50 rounds, then you have a chance at an exotic Fallen piece that can only drop from the Fallen room. And that'll add a ton of replayability to that. People will be trying to get it for different roles and different looks, and with the way light levels work now on class items, as much as I disagree with that, it would be a great way to get people to really get in there and start grinding for a few more really cool things. Now, level scaling in there should work differently as well. The further you make it, they should go and ramp up in level. For example, in Taken King now, if something is 10 light levels above you, you can still handle that fairly easily. Oryx Hard Mode has been beaten by level 300s and below, and that's pretty crazy. So maybe if they can have some type of scaling where we could go up to maybe even something like 400, just ridiculous light levels where if you survive 5 rounds at 400 light, then you are guaranteed so many legendary drops or something like that. Just give us some incentive to really go in there and get some loot out of it, because if they do this right, Destiny will go back to its roots of being a loot shoot game, or looter shooter, however you want to call it. I called it loot shoot for some reason because, yeah. But I probably won't do too much heavy editing into this. This is more of kind of, I feel like this topic is better to speak of off the cuff. But yeah, if they can give us some way to really make this loot grind worthy, then just imagine. Like the idea of getting a special limited exotic class item just for playing a certain number of rounds, or the higher difficulty you go, then the fewer rounds you have to play, something like that. A lot of the exploits in Prison of Elders have been found already, and they could add different barriers or new mechanics to make it so it works differently. Now, for boss encounters, they desperately need to change up how they work because the bosses in PoE are just absolute bullet sponges. The worst offender, of course, being the servitor Orbix Prime, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember what his name is. I just remember him as the giant servitor bullet sponge that refills his health on ether dregs or whatever they're called. That is a bit unacceptable at this point. Destiny has been around a while. It's beyond the point where we get bullet sponge bosses like Sepix Prime, like the Archon Priest, like Fogoth. We desperately need mechanics. If this is going to be taking the place of a raid for some people, then it definitely has to be that type of experience. If it is, of course, going to be limited to 3 people like the original Prison of Elders, then they can't skip on mechanics. They really need to make sure that there is a very deep experience in this mode. But, of course, this is all going based off speculation. And just to sum it all up, maybe new introduction of ways to earn loot, easier ways to earn loot, new boss mechanics, and endless waves with you being able to switch rooms whenever you please. But that's all for the video today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you.